All right, welcome back to the Select Start Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Ace, and our whole squad is here. Coach Killer is here, and he was in the driver's seat for a little bit to get his first win of the season until Stephon Diggs had something to say about that. How you doing, Kosher?
Hanging in, waiting to see why the hell Singletary wasn't used more today.
Yes. Let's hope you get the answers you need. The commish, Nye, finally got his first win of the season. I know you downplayed it for 4 weeks, but how you really feeling?
On to the next one. For real. On to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
And lastly, the rock hopping goat himself, Big Baller Edgar, fresh off a stat correction loss last week, took a L this week. Not the best ways to start your week 5. How you doing, Big Baller Edgar?
Well, I'm coming off another little bit of a hiccup, but I'm feeling pretty good. I kind of sat Mike Evans and Miles Sanders, so that might have made a difference. We'll see about that next week. And Kosher, I might have a theory. I think the Bills like TJ Yeldon as their pass catching back. Because that's all I've ever seen since Zach Moss started getting injured.
Yeah.
Sorry if it's not the answer you were looking for.
No,
But it is an answer.
I know. You're the one had you started TJ Yeldon tonight.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get Zach Moss back in the equation, too. I think he had like a sore toe or something. Anyways, we'll jump right into it. And I guess we should start with the big news. As painful as it is for me to report another major NFL injury to lead off our show yet again, I'll pass this to you, Kosher. You want to get us caught up with the Dak situation.
Assuming you haven't heard, Dak Prescott injured his ankle with a compound fracture. He had surgery on it Sunday. It's going to be about an 8-month recovery period for both the bone and for the muscle to return to full strength. So that's going to put him right around training camp. Dallas signed quarterback Garrett Gilbert to now back up Andy Dalton because obviously Dak is done for the year.
You hate to think anyone benefits from a guy like Dak getting hurt, but which of the wide receivers in any other skill position benefit from an injury like this? I'll start with you, Big Baller.
I got to say, I'm going to be bumping up all DST streamers against the Cowboys from what I previously would have projected them at. I don't think this offense benefits outside of Ezekiel Elliott. I think you give him a few more carries. Dalton's not the same quarterback that Dak is. Dak is much more mobile. Dak is a better quarterback at this point in his career, and he was making use of those weapons. I don't see the skill positions outside of that really benefiting from having a downgrade at the QB position.
Okay, so maybe they run the ball more. Nye, jump in here.
No, I agree. I think the person who stands the most to benefit is an Ezekiel Elliott, considering, when you get down close to the goal line, it could really go either way when it comes to Dak Prescott or Ezekiel Elliott. Now you're going to see a lot of those carries be funneled to Ezekiel Elliott. You might even see a Tony Pollard get into the mix down there by the goal line. But as it stands right now, Ezekiel Elliott is the biggest, I don't want to say winner, but he stands to benefit the most from this situation, with the passing options kind of being tossed up into the air. And we're not really going to know how this, receiving core is going to shake out until, a few games, maybe not even, maybe another month or so, maybe 2 or 3 games before we figure out, the pecking order. But as it stands right now, if you have Amari Cooper, you're going to be comfortable playing Amari Cooper. If you have a CeeDee Lamb, you could be comfortable playing a CeeDee Lamb. I think the positions you're going to tend to kind of think about a little bit more is Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz. We'll see, though. He kind of had a connection with Michael Gallup the other day. He looked for him a lot. That's a situation that you kind of want to monitor.
Kosher, I mean, you're the owner of Dak Prescott in our league. How you feeling about this personally, man?
Devastated, man. Crushed. Dak, for anyone who has him in fantasy, knows that he's a consistent producer. So now you're looking to replace a consistent at least 20 to 30 points per week in that quarterback position, and that's not easy to do. Because if you can't make it up in the position, you've got to be able to make it up in over 2 or 3 positions, and that can be a lot to make up on a week-by-week basis.
No, yeah, like Dinner said, he's a consistent producer. He was last season. I benefited it for myself. You hate to lose that from your fantasy roster. It's going to be hard. I think that Andy Dalton is an option if you are QB needy off of this Dak loss, but I don't think he's the best option you would look for. I'd probably actually look to trade pieces if I need a QB in my league format. If you're playing in a single QB league, then you're just streaming, really. You're not going to be trying to make a move like that. But otherwise, I know Ian mentioned it. Dalton Schultz and Michael Gallup are both question marks now. He did show Andy Dalton a little bit more of a tendency to go to Gallup. The targets were there for Gallup. I think it was once he came in, it was 4 Gallup, 4 CD. 3 to Amari. I'm sort of loose after that, but it was interesting because CD saw a high target share from Dak. He saw a high target share at the beginning of that game. So there's this now question mark of where's Andy Dalton gonna like to go, especially with this set of weapons. It's a different set of weapons than what he used to have back in Cincinnati. So we can draw some idea that he's gonna give good targets to his slot man and give some good targets to his main receiver at Amari, but everything really is a little bit up in the air. Like, you probably still have good pieces. These are all very capable guys, but you're now up to thinking, like, is Michael Gallup going to take the step over CeeDee Lamb? Is CeeDee Lamb is he going to continue to be what he was? Because he was shaping into one of the steals of the draft. Super high target share, high catch rate. Now we don't know if Andy Dalton's going to keep giving him that target share, and so he'll still be valuable. CeeDee Lamb's not going away. Don't drop him, guys, but you might have to make an adjustment based on where the targets are going. If they start moving away or they start moving to other places.
That's a great point about CeeDee Lamb. He looked great on Sunday. That's definitely a situation we're going to have to keep our eye out on as far as, where those targets end up going. And also, I think it's kind of an underrated kind of factor in place here. Are we getting good Andy Dalton or are we getting bad Andy Dalton? We saw him look okay against a really, really shaky defense. Let's just be quite honest. The New York Giants defense isn't anything to write home about. We also have the Dalvin Cook groin injury. Word on the streets today, he's going to miss at least one game.
With that Dalvin Cook situation, it scares me. And if I was a Dalvin Cook owner, I'd be a little worried right now. I know they're saying it's a 1-week injury, and I think they're going to play it week by week. So if he kind of feels better next week, he's a little bit more of a questionable, more than a doubtful type guy. But this might be an injury.
They have a bye, though. So they're trying to give him 2 weeks back-to-back before the Packer game, I think.
Oh, they've got a bye.
You're correct. It's one of those situations where, hey, maybe you think about, whether or not you want to move him. I think I would consider moving him, considering you're about to go 2 weeks without an important player. And honestly, Dalvin Cook, with his injury history, the chance for a re-injury is obviously there because of his history with just not being able to stay healthy. I really wouldn't put a lot of stock in carrying Dalvin Cook, for my stretch run down the stretch. I would be actively trying to move him.
I'll take it a step further. I think that Alexander Mattison has got Mike Davis value right now. Yeah. Not Mike Davis like today, but Mike Davis when you should have picked Mike Davis up. The word is that the MRI went pretty well. If I've ever heard vaguer wording on the results of an MRI,
exactly.
I don't remember it. This is not good, guys. This is not an injury that you can play around with. Dalvin Cook tried to play again. They put him in on a play-action play, and he could not finish a play-action play without coming up gimping. Dalvin Cook is a major worry right now. They're not being transparent with us. Why? Why are they not being transparent with us with a guy with major injury risks it's a groin strain, guys. It's an adductor strain. That's your ability to cross your legs to a duck. No, it's not good.
Dalvin Cook is great, a special athlete, but Alexander Mattison could probably start on a lot of teams in the league. I only see Alexander Madison's role being expanded upon.
I think it's also important to note, Mike Boone did have some production, did have some starting games, but those all came after Alexander Mattison also got injured last season. So maybe it does come push. Maybe if Alexander Mattison also comes down, then I would look at Mike Boone. But I'm off of him until, like I said, let them put him on the field, and then I'll be part of the rush to pick him up off the waiver wire. But unless I have that spot, if I have an open roster spot, that's actually a move it's prudent to make to pick up a guy who could either through injury or just through different play styles from last year. They have new coaches, and so you never know. But that's a name to watch out for.
But I do agree, it does make Madison very valuable just for the rest of the season.
We'll have to shoot something where we discuss like the most valuable handcuffs. You've got to certainly think Alexander Mattison is like up there in the top 3, top 5.
Yeah, he's up there. I think Tony Pollard's at the top of that list.
All right. So move on. We'll talk some top performers now. Get out all this injury talk. And I'll start with the Dolphins. them doing their best 49er impersonation on the 49ers was everything. And maybe not so suddenly, those guys are looking like world beaters. You've got Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's at the center of it all. He's currently having a top 12 quarterback year this year, added 3 more touchdowns in Sunday's round of San Francisco. DK Metcalf and Adam Thielen, they both added 2 more touchdowns to their season total. And even Ian's boy, Miles Sanders, had his best game since week 2. I got a question for you, Nye. Is Miles Sanders going to keep that same energy next week against the Ravens?
Are we going to
Clyde
against the
Edwards-Helaire had 20
You know what?
points
I'm
against
gonna
the
go and say
Ravens. I'm
yeah.
just saying.
You know, we didn't like a lot of people didn't think he was gonna show up against Pittsburgh. A lot of people were quite surprised. It's one of those things where he's their best weapon. They're gonna get him the football. Do I think they're gonna have as much success as they did with the Travis Fulghams and the Greg Wards next week? No, I don't. It might even be a heavy Zach Ertz game, but I expect Miles Sanders to be heavily involved in the game plan next week against Baltimore.
Miles Sanders keeping that same energy. Let's hope you keep that same energy come next week, brah. All right. Alex Smith returned on Sunday, too, and he took Aaron Donald for a piggyback ride. That was nerve-wracking. And heck, even Derek Carr had his first top 5 finish in week 5 and is still continuing to outscore Lamar Jackson. And I got a question for Big Baller Edgar. Is Lamar Jackson still worth the high draft capital it took to acquire him at this point?
You know what? You might be starting to think that maybe he wasn't. When we bring up Derek Carr, I believe it was week 2, week 5, and week 3. Each one of those weeks, Derek Carr finished the week better than Lamar Jackson. We're 5 weeks in. I don't care about final point scores. Derek Carr managers have 3 better weeks to Lamar Jackson owners 2 better weeks. That's got to mean something. That's got to mean something. But ultimately, you're looking for better weeks. That's what you win. That's what wins you fantasy with. That's daily fantasy or season-long fantasy. You want to win the week. Right now, Derek Carr is doing that better for you than you, Lamar. So why would I be out here telling you Lamar Jackson is still worth that first-round value? Because we're 5 weeks into the season. This last week, you can call it a wash because first, Lamar Jackson might not be as good of a thrower as last season his last season's numbers made him seem. In fact, we should all expect that. Lamar Jackson was a raw prospect. There's a reason he dropped it. There's a reason that there was so much debate about whether he should have even started his first year. And it wasn't because, oh my God, Lamar Jackson can't ball out. It's because Lamar Jackson is still a developing player. He still is this season. He still was last season, despite the gaudy numbers that he put up. This past week, you probably got scared. In lots of fantasy formats, Lamar Jackson had a low score. He had 37 attempts, 19 completions. That's a low completion percentage. Only 180 yards. And you know what killed him? He only rushed the ball 2 times for 3 yards. You didn't draft Lamar Jackson for that. You drafted Lamar Jackson for Kyler Murray, but you knew Lamar Jackson had a knee injury this week. If you had an option, you could have been prudent. You could have stepped off it. We've seen Lamar Jackson struggle to hit his receivers this year. Marquise Brown hasn't taken that step, and it has to be recognized that a big reason for that is Lamar Jackson's arm. But Lamar's going to get healthy again. His knee will be better. It might not be next week. It probably comes the week after, and you probably see him get a little bit healthier in that knee. He's going to start running again. He's going to give you that floor. He's still the player you picked up in an early round because of his running floor. That's what we talk about through the offseason. The value of a running quarterback is not that he is going to finish every week at the top. Kyler Murray has been one of the best quarterbacks this year, and I don't think he's had a number 1 week. This man, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, had a 2-interception, 3-interception game and still finished top 12.
He's played awful 4 of the 5 weeks of the season. No cap.
But he's great in fantasy. He's got the running floor, and that's going to give your team what you're looking for if you already have him on your squad. Lamar Jackson's going to bounce back. He's at a sell low. Don't sell low. If you wait for a good week. Sell high if you really don't think that good week can sustain itself. But right now is not the moment to sell Lamar Jackson. You put too much into it, and he's worth that investment as long as you find the right out. And this is not it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you're an owner who doesn't have Lamar Jackson, you better come knocking.
Yeah. Owners are going to be reluctant to want to trade him, but in their hearts of hearts, it's telling them, hey, you might want to start looking and see what I can get for him before it gets too late.
You know what? I expect Lamar Jackson owners to be very, very active.
Very quickly, let's get some top performers in here. You're being quiet, Kosher. Let's start with you.
And I got to go with Justin Herbert. He's gone up against some of the best quarterbacks in the game, some of the biggest names in the game, and he's held his own. Held his own on Monday night against Drew Brees and the Saints. I think he's one of the top performers to keep an eye on. I think he's certainly outperforming what a lot of people, myself included, thought he'd be doing.
Okay, Justin Herbert makes our top performers 2 weeks in a row. And I think he definitely kept that same energy. Big Baller, top performer, sir.
I'm going to talk about Stephon Diggs. He's coming off of just tonight's game, 16 targets, 10 receptions, 106 yards. And I think the biggest thing that I want to touch on with Stephon Diggs is this is more of a season-long recognition for a guy who has consistently finished each week inside of the top 12. This guy has been consistent as hell. He's only got 2 touchdowns. So all these points are coming from his insane target volume, apologies. John Brown was out tonight, so that did probably contribute to the 16 targets. But prior to that, 9 targets, 13, 6, and 7. He's been under 80 yards in only 1 game. And that was really his poorest game against the Rams. He still managed to salvage you with the touchdown. But Stephon Diggs is performing really well this season. Stephon Diggs had a really good week this week with 10 and a 106. I want to throw that one out to Stephon Diggs.
I dig it. Oh, also want to mention, if you're going to mention consistent players, man, throw Jamison Crowder into that mix too. That man has been a pillar of consistency and a situation that's a freak show. So shout out Jamison Crowder.
You know what?
Man,
and I'm about to. My top performer of the week is Jamison Crowder. 10 targets. It's funny that you mentioned him. 10 targets, 8 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. It's very seldom that we get to talk about Jets players being fantasy assets, but Jamison Crowder is a stud. He's been a stud for the last few years, especially as a Jet. He's been a very consistent player, somebody who flies underneath the radar, who probably goes a lot later than he should in fantasy drafts. But Jamison Crowder, definite stud. If he's on your waiver wire, he shouldn't be. It's a travesty. But definitely a player you could probably go get. Considering he does play for Adam Gase, and there is that uncertainty there. You never know when Adam Gase is going to cut somebody. But, 10 targets is, in all 3 of the games he's played. He had 13 in week 1. Definitely a guy worth keeping your eye on. And if you don't have him, try to go get him.
As soon as you said it's very rarely we can talk about a Jets player, it just dawned on me that Kosher hadn't mentioned Mekhi Becton's name since the season started.
Yeah. I mean, Mekhi Becton got injured, I think, a week or 2 ago.
Oh, did he get hurt?
Yeah.
I will also note that Joe Flacco out there. Did anybody see Joe Flacco out there sprinting for first downs?
Sprinting? Is Joe Flacco?
Yes, he was outrunning. He was outrunning guys. It was very alarming. I was like, dude, this 2020 is crazy.
We'll switch gears a little bit. I'm going to throw a new wrinkle into the episode this week. Rookie Watch. I'll start with Chase Claypool. He had the 4th highest score of any player all year. He scored 4 TDs, trailing only the likes of Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, and saw CeeDee Lamb have another great game, catching 8 out of 11 targets, gathering 124 yards in the process. Very quickly, guys, give us some rookies fantasy owners should keep their eyes on. I'll start with you, Kosher.
I'd keep my eyes on Laviska Shenault, the wide receiver for the Jaguars. He's been worked more and more into the offense. We see this with his target share. The first 2 games, they went to him 4 times each. Next 2 games, 6 times. Last week, 8 targets. He's developing a little bit of chemistry with Gardner Minshew, and I think that's only going to raise his ceiling.
Nye, Rookie Watch.
Just bear with me here because I have 2. First off, I already mentioned him last week, Darrell Mooney. His snap count has gone up in every single game he's played. He's already taken the number 2 spot in Chicago away from Alfred Miller. I think he had 6 targets the other night against Tampa Bay. They're looking for him more and more. This guy is a great separator. I expect his production to continue to rise. I'm going to talk about a defensive player here, Patrick Queen. He's been balling out all season. More than likely, he is on a roster. If he is not, definitely roster this guy. But I'm just going to shout out Patrick Queen because he is just killing it this year. Finished a 9-tackle game with a sack, a forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. This guy is just playing his butt off. A great fit with a great player in the middle of that defense. I think we talked about it in our preseason talk, our pre-draft talk, about how Patrick Queen and his fit was going to just be seamless with the Baltimore Ravens. Man, it has. And I'm looking forward to it continuing throughout the rest of the year.
Rookie watch. Big Baller Edgar, jump in here, brother.
I'm gonna talk about J.K. Dobbins just for a second. This is more of a guy who maybe I'm trying to make this happen more than anything else, because they're not getting anything from Mark Ingram. I talked to him up all offseason, so I'll take that one right to the dome. He's just not been efficient. J.K. Dobbins has been more efficient. He's got the least. He's kind of seen his snap share drop a little bit, but nothing too significant. They've definitely started to use him more on passing downs. He's receiving the most targets from those backs, although in that offense that's not saying too much yet. Those are 4-2-3 in the last 3 weeks, so that's not a high target share. He's not a guy who you can roster because you're gonna live off of points per reception, PPR league guys. But J.K. Dobbins has been more efficient than Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram has not been very efficient. Gus Edwards continues to see a very consistent snap percentage, but he was seeing that last season. It's reasonable in my mind to assume that Gus Edwards' role is going to kind of just be what it is. Maybe he gets a few more rushes here and there, but I think that this is really a tilt that you see between Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. And you never know. J.K. Dobbins might be that move where it actually brings a little bit more consistency back to the offense as well. We've seen the Ravens struggle a little bit. They haven't been the exact same firepowered unit that we had last year, absolutely tearing fantasy worlds apart and leading that team to a pretty nice record. So none of these other guys are getting receptions. If J.K. Dobbins gets a few more, not even a few more, a few more carries, but if we can see him start to actually get a role, and there's the potential that there could be a fantasy player in there for this season.
DeAndre Swift, another guy who's had 3 out of 4 good weeks. He's been pretty consistent, even not being the feature back. Might be a guy you can go target who's had a pretty nice floor over the first month or so of the season.
All right. Okay, so that's going to wrap up our rookie watch. Is there anyone else we're missing? Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's a situation there, not really into the end zone much these days with Clyde Edwards. Antonio Gibson's in kind of a situation. You guys want to speak on any of those players before we move on? Very quickly, jump in here, Big Baller.
I do have one guy. This one's going out to a little bit shallower leagues, shallower bench leagues at least. Take a look out there and see if Michael Pittman is on waiver wires. He's got the IR designation right now. So say you don't have a taxi squad, but you've got an open IR spot. Drop a defense real quick. Pick up Pittman. Put him on the IR spot. Pick up a defense again. See what happens when he comes back. He's dealing with an injury. He'll probably have a couple more weeks, but you never know. Michael Pittman is a Trojans, but he's a talented guy. He's a talented guy.
I like that.
He had
I like that, Edgar. I like that.
He had high draft stock because he's a talented guy. This offense hasn't gotten going. There hasn't been a weapon that's come out of it yet. Michael Pittman can walk in and he can show that he is that weapon. He can show that the rest of these guys really are around him.
Keep that same energy, man. It's time, man. It's everybody's favorite segment. Last week, Nye, the commission, he nailed it with his Joe Mixon to keep that same putrid energy that he's had, weeks 1 through 3. I mean, not everyone can put up good numbers against, the top defense. But we're going to give Nye his roses on his call last week. He finished with 0 touchdowns last week on 24 carries and 59 yards. Not very good.
Should have sold him.
You should have sold him. So this week, it gives me the greatest pleasure to announce Brandon Cook's name today, man. With a stellar performance Sunday, hauling in 8 of 12 targets on 161 yards and a score. I know we all love to see that type of performance from B. Cooks. He's a kind of a fan favorite player. He's back and fantasy relevant. And I'm going to pin him up against Marquise Brown because Sunday was easily his best showing of the year. He hauled in 6 of 10 targets for 77 yards and a score. Who we got, fellas, to keep that same energy? I'll start with you, Kosher.
I got Marquise Brown keeping that same energy. He's had at least 6 targets every game. 6, he's had 8, he's had 10. Where he's got to improve a little bit is he's got to be more efficient. 6 out of 10 isn't going to cut it most weeks. What is going to help him is Lamar Jackson getting healthy. I know that might mean that Lamar runs a little bit, and that might take a few passes away. Right now, the script flows through Marquise Brown. Brandon Cooks has been targeted 6 or more times, only twice this season. Once was this past week where he had 12 targets. He also had 8 targets earlier. Otherwise, he's getting between 3 and 5 targets a game. Brown is more of a factor in that offense.
Hey, Marquise Brown for Kosher. He's preaching efficiency.
Ooh.
Okay, Nye. Who's keeping that same energy, homie?
Damn. You know, I'm happy to see both these players kind of performing. Marquise Brown has been very inconsistent to start the year. Brandon Cooks was a ghost for the first month of the season. Actually, no, he had a pretty good game against Baltimore. They played the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 12 targets, 8 catches, 161 yards with a score. He gets a pretty favorable schedule over the next couple of weeks. I'm gonna go with Brandon Cooks on this, and it's only because I just don't think the Baltimore Ravens passing game is that consistent. It still flows through Mark Andrews, and they just haven't looked right. They haven't looked in sync. I think with Brandon Cooks, they're starving for another receiver outside of Will Fuller, and I think Brandon Cooks is going to help in that regard. As soon as Bill O'Brien gets fired, he gets 12, targets, and over 150 yards receiving. I'm taking Brandon Cooks. I don't even think it's that hard.
I tried to make it a position-on-position battle this week for you, Commish. Big Baller, who's keeping that energy, man?
Man, you guys already know what train I'm hopping on today.
Cook
I'm
train?
hopping on that train to Hollywood.
Hey.
You're coming on the Cooks train.
And I gotta say, it's for one reason. Because if you take away that touchdown, I think Marquise Brown has more weeks like this. I don't think he's got 20-point weeks, but I don't think Brandon Cooks has 30-point weeks. Who's keeping that same energy? I'm keeping the same energy with Marquise Brown. He's had 3 out of these 5 games of the season, which is over 70 yards. That's really it. That's the energy I'm keeping. Marquise Brown's going to keep having games over 70 yards. For the majority of this season, his yard total at the end of the game is going to be over 70 yards. You might not win a week off him, but it's going to be there. If you're talking to me about Brandon Cooks has 2 games over 90, and the rest of them under 23, one of them with nothing at all. Keeping some kind of energy, Marquise Brown has shown me that this energy is through the season. Knock that touchdown off. It'll come week to week. Honestly, Lamar and Mark Andrews are going to take most of those. But Brandon Cooks, I didn't like him before the season. And the reason I don't trust him on this injury comeback. The Texans have not been good this year. I want to hope that B.O.B. being gone is going to bring back some wins. But I didn't like Brandon Cooks, and it had nothing to do with the Texans. I didn't like Brandon Cooks after his performance last year. After he started going down with concussions, he was not the same player. He still had that potential to give you a week-to-week game. But he showed me last year he was not the same guy that we know. And I don't care that it's 6 seasons. He's injury-prone, and he's been injury-prone. And the injuries that he gets are not the kind of injuries that you like building up over a career. I don't like guys who have concussions build up over 6 years. Sure, athleticism is also there, but when your brain starts to get injured, I don't like to trust those guys. Marquise Brown is young. Marquise Brown is number 1. Brandon Cooks is not a number 1. Not on his team, at least. He's a 1A maybe. But Marquise Brown is number 1 wide receiver on that team. Yeah, it's Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. And then just a bunch of literally no one else. I've seen other wide receivers in Houston go off. I've seen their tight ends be very, very viable for taking touchdowns away from their wide receivers. And I've seen David Johnson involved in the passing game. There's too many mouths to feed there. Brandon Cooks is not the player I want to trust. I haven't trusted him since last season. I'm not going to start now. Marquise Brown, he's not giving me 20-point weeks. I'm not seeing the high upside, keeping that energy. But 70 yards, 6 targets, 6 catches, that's been his energy this season.
All right, I was saying
Hollywood, baby.
He gets Darius Slay next week. He gets the bye, and then he gets Pittsburgh with Joe Hayden. He gets Indianapolis, Xavier Rhodes, their number 1 defense. And then he gets also as well, he gets New England, so that's Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson, whichever one he wants. And then he comes back around to Tennessee, gets Pittsburgh again, and he finally gets Dallas in week 13. I'm going B. Cooks. B. Cooks, at least over the next month or so, I think it's B. Cooks.
You can take the top off those corners. Joe Hayden's 31, Philadelphia, Darius Slay. You can take the top off these guys.
You're darn right, but you know what?
It's too late.
I'm going with Cooks. I'm going with Cooks. I'm going with Cooks. I'm pretty confident on it. I really wouldn't want any of these guys.
You guys make sure you tune in next week to see who kept that same energy. Was it B. Cooks? Was it Marquise Brown, man? We're taking the train. Just so you know, there's no talking in the quiet car, okay? No talking in the quiet car. That'll do it for week 5. Our week 5? Week 5 already? Sheesh. Very quickly, guys, any final thoughts?
Injuries are just a name of the game. We're seeing a lot of big guys go down, and if you're like me, you're absolutely devastated because you had Dak Prescott on your team. But that means that you're going to adapt your strategy. You're going to look for players you hadn't thought of before. And if you're winning, keep doing what you're doing. If you're like me and you're struggling, try and make up some ground using the waiver wire. Play a little bit more aggressively.
Kamish, now that you've cracked the code and you got on the board this year, what do you got to tell our viewers, man? Final thoughts.
Final thoughts? Man, just be ready for another week to kind of like flip the fantasy season upside down. It's been happening every week. Man, at the moment's notice, somebody goes down. It can change the complexion of your entire team, and more so this year than any other year. So it's imperative that you kind of just stay ready and be ready for anybody on your roster going down.
And stay ready, so you got to get ready.
And
Big
hopefully
Baller
your
Edgar.
players aren't punching people.
Big Baller Edgar, final thoughts, man.
This is around the time of the season where the waiver wire gets a little bit too dry for my taste. So this is where I really tell you, go out there. We've seen injuries. Don't just grab your handcuff. You can grab your handcuff if you want. You can try to just hold on that. But maybe you're the guy who picked up Mike Davis, and all of a sudden you had an RB2 for 4 weeks. Way to go. Now you had an RB2 along to go with your RB2 that you drafted. Don't wait for somebody else to take the guys that pop up on the waiver wire. Don't wait for your guy to get injured. See what you can hold. See what your roster allows. And if you're behind, if you're one of those guys who struggle a little bit out of the gate, find some creative ways. You know, maybe there's somebody who doesn't trust the player, but you know about him. Maybe he's on your squad. You've been watching him. You know what's going on. Maybe you go try to find a way to slink him back over to your roster because other people don't believe in him the same way. They just see final result numbers and move on. Be the guy who uses what you know to try and find a way to come back if you haven't started too strong. This whole league is all over the place. I thought I was 3-0. I think I went 2-1 or 3-1, 3-2. I'm all over the place. I can't. If I look at my schedule, sorry, at my record too hard, I'm gonna get caught up in, oh my God, look, I started the season so well. Nah, every single week you got to go out there and make sure you're setting yourself up for the rest of the season.
And to quote Denzel Washington from Training Day, this is chess, not checkers. Chess, nigga. Chess. All right, let's go wrap it up for us, man. For myself, Big Wallet's friend, Kosher Killer, Night that's being spelled backwards, man. Thank you guys for tuning into our podcast. Make sure you guys like, you comment, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, spam our comments. Tell us what you guys want to see us cover. We're out of here.
Baby, what you doing on that corner, baby? Selling.
Fuck you, I got kids to feed.
Yeah.